Zach Miller, old buddy. How's it going, man? Welcome to the podcast.
Good. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
I'm so excited to finally have you on the show. Of course, you're a fan favorite and I frequently requested guest, and we're finally putting it together. You're broadcasting from the Zach Shack, your mobile home there. Where are you right now? I know you've been on the road for a bit.
Yeah, I kind of been all over. I'm in Woodland Park right now, Woodland Park, Colorado, which is just above Colorado Springs. So basically I'm in the Springs. We've just been doing some shooting today and tomorrow up. Today we're up near Rampart Range Reservoir. So I just popped down to town to do the pod.
Awesome, man. Yeah, beautiful area there. Well, cool. Well, obviously you've done a lot of pods, but, I think there's a lot of fun stuff for us to talk about, and you've been on a bit of a journey with injury, and now coming through that, it seems like with a fantastic victory at the Andorra by UTMB race, 105K just a few weeks ago. And I want to talk all about that. But before we get to that, I want to tell the story of when I had to take you to the hospital at the North Face Athlete Summit a few years ago, because I don't think we've ever really spoken about this publicly. And even though it was a little scary in real time, at least for me, it was a fairly entertaining episode. So maybe tell the story of what happened there.
Yeah, we were down in, where were we? We were in Moab, I think, right?
We were in Sedona.
Or no, not Moab. We were in Sedona. Yeah, we were down in Sedona, Arizona for a athlete summit, and I was running, and I was just like, I had all this like pain in my chest. So I was like really having trouble like breathing, like getting a full breath in. Like it wasn't like my heart wasn't necessarily like, well, maybe it was racing because I couldn't really get oxygen properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just had like all this chest pain, and like I couldn't, like every time I like took a breath in, it was just like it really hurt. So I probably happened on like one or two runs, and then finally I like found you, and I was like, "Hey, can you take me to the ER?
Can you take me to the hospital?"
Yeah, I gotta get like checked out. Like I can't breathe right. So we went in there, and yeah, they did some tests, and it didn't really come out to be much. I think they basically just thought like I had some inflammation in there, that maybe I had taken a fall or something and inflamed something, and they gave me some some anti-inflammatory to take, and it basically cleared it up.
Well, I mean, to add my color to it, I mean, we had gone on a run that afternoon, just a short one. I think it was like 60, 90 minutes or something. And we were talking just like about your training and all the stuff that you have going on. And from memory, I remember you saying something like, I've just been running like 4 or 5 hours a day. You'd been on the road, sort of living in your truck, and in true Zach Miller fashion, just going full gas and totally bought in and doing 4 or 5 hours of training every day. So, but when I dropped you off at the hospital, I remember they like checked you in and brought you into the back, and you fell asleep in like 2 minutes. You were totally asleep in the back of the hospital. I was like, this is it. You just need to sleep a little bit more, train a little bit less. I don't think it's a truly, life or health threatening issue. I think Zach Miller just goes full gas all the time. So
I was training a lot. But yeah, I still don't really know for sure what that was. I think the best I figured was when I ran down from bar camp to go to that athlete summit, some guy had like paid me money to carry a sleeping bag to town for him. So I like ran down with all my gear plus his sleeping bag on my back. And I remember I fell somewhere along the way, like real hard, but I was like, fine. And then on the way out to Sedona, I stopped and did Sedona. I stopped and did like a really big run out in Lost Creek Wilderness. And then I went and visited the Vargos and Flagstaff, and it was smoky. And I remember it being painful there. And I was like, well, maybe it was just like the smoke messing with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it just kind of got really bad down in Sedona. And so, yeah, but I would have been training.
Anyway, it was all good, but I think,
it cleared up, and
It was one of those things where I think,
but
the fans of the sport would get a little chuckle out of it, because basically you ran yourself into the hospital because you just go so hard all the time. And I actually wanted to talk about this. I think this is actually a fun place to start, and just your work ethic, because just thinking about you personally, I've always known that you train super hard. Everybody knows that you race with just this deep determination and courage. And then thinking about living and working up at bar camp, it's long hours, it's physically strenuous. You're chopping wood, you're cooking meals, you're fetching water. Where does your work ethic come from? If you look back at your childhood or the people that were influential upon the person that Zach Miller is, where do you think you get your work ethic from?
Yeah, probably just growing up, just everybody in my family is a hard worker. There isn't really anyone lazy in my family. So, and I think my dad was always working really hard, doing a lot of physical labor. And, on a weekend, we did fun things for sure. I played sports and we took the boat out and stuff like that. But then there were also weekends where, the weekend was splitting, collecting firewood or something, with my dad and my uncle. And, it'd be Saturday. That's just what you're doing. You're just out there, or maybe, or even it'll even be family oriented. That, maybe we're freezing corn. We do a lot, we grew up in a very rural area, and you're freezing corn. And it's just a whole family activity. And it's a Friday, you go buy all the corn you can get, basically. Not all but you buy a ton of corn. And then we just spend all day, just, husking it and boiling it and cutting it off the cob, putting in bags, putting in the freezer, and so just all those activities were labor intensive. So I think, and that's just stuff that was normal growing up to do. So yeah, I think it just came from that type of stuff. So yeah. And just my sisters all got it. And everybody just kind of knew how to work hard.
Yeah. Well, clearly it's made you a great athlete. Where are you right now in your life? I mean, obviously you sort of put the bar camp period of your life and career in the rearview mirror. I think a year and a half or 2 years ago now. And I know you've sort of been on the road back and forth between your home on the East Coast where you grew up and in the Mountain West where you've spent a lot of time. And you have this beautiful van where you're broadcasting from. So maybe that's at least home much of the year. But what does life look like right now for you?
Lately I've been bouncing a lot. I've kind of just been on the road since April. I'm just kind of wherever I want to be. I was in Oregon for a good chunk of last year in Bend. I got there in the summer, and then I stayed for the fall, and then in the winter I hunkered down there and just did a lot of skiing, a lot of.
Really?
I didn't do it.
I didn't even realize that, man. We were neighbors.
I didn't do that. I didn't do nearly as much running this winter. I did a lot of Nordic skiing, a lot of skate skiing. And then in the spring, I did a bunch of split boarding, just skinning laps on my split board. Mm-hmm. I ran too and rode my gravel bike as well. But the winter was a lot of skiing. So yeah, I was there for a while. And then in April, I just kind of hit the road. And I've just been bouncing. I was let's see, I helped Iron Farr at Canyons 100K, and then I went to Tahoe and did a photo shoot, and then I did a running camp in New Mexico, and then I went to Colorado and trained for a week or two. Then I drove my bus to Pennsylvania and dropped it off at my parents' place because it needed to get some inspections done, and I went to Europe while it got the inspections done. So I was over in Europe for a month, and then I popped back to Oregon for a week, and then then I went all the way back to Pennsylvania to see the family and do some vacation in Virginia, and then it just drove out to Silverton the other week and paced Maggie Gutierrez at Hardrock.
You're truly living the dream, man.
So I'm just kind of all over. Yeah, now I'm trying to kind of hunker down. I'm kind of trying to hunker down in Colorado now, at least at least to prep for UTMB.
Yep.
I've been hanging out in the Springs. I know this area really well, so
great place to train for UTMB, especially. Yeah, well, awesome.
So
well, let's talk all about that stuff in a little bit, but I want to just kind of first rewind and talk about the last few years, because you've been on a journey, bro. And I think much of the sport was so happy to see you pull off that victory at Andorra, punch your ticket back to UTMB, and sort of hopefully start to put this process of injury behind you. And obviously I want to talk all about the race, but first I want to, talk about the injury. And I want to read a recent Instagram post of yours just to open the door to this conversation. And of course, this comes from a post where there's a brilliant photo of you, going 110% effort down the finishing chute at the Andorra by UTMB race in trademark Zach Miller fashion, with sort of like a twisted, grimacing face. You can totally tell that you're fully selling out to secure this awesome victory. And I just want to read this long caption and then use it as a way to just kind of like open up the door on the rest of this conversation, because I think it's beautifully written and there's a lot of different angles that we could go from it. So anyway, what you say is, at 7 p.m. on Friday, June 24th, in the tiny town of Ordino, in the tiny country of Andorra, I stepped to the start line of the Trail 100 Andorra. At 9:20 a.m. the following morning, I was the first runner to reach the finish line. That's what you see in this picture. What you don't see is what happened before this. You don't see me failing to finish my last attempt at Ultra at UTMB in 2019. You don't see the years of running with pain in my left foot when the steps that were supposed to bring me joy brought a constant reminder of my brokenness. You don't see all of the mornings that I woke up, stepped out of bed, and was immediately reminded of the pain in my foot, that I was still hurt. You don't see the scar on my ankle from the Hagelin surgery that I finally got in December of 2020 and the long journey back to running. You don't see the moments of doubt after surgery, still having pain, not knowing if it would ever fully subside. You don't see the creativity employed to keep the training going via bikes, skis, swimming, and the split board. You don't see the moment about a month ago when the pain shifted to the inside of my heel and I wasn't sure that this race would happen. You don't see me visiting a physio in France and thinking about bailing on the plans to do this race. You don't see me traveling to Andorra amidst an 8-day running break in which I spent many hours on the bike and many more worried about my foot. You don't see me getting so lonely, stressed, and desperate that one night while praying, I simply asked for help. Nothing very specific, just help. That's what you don't see. But you know what? You also don't see a lot of good things. You don't see all of the helpers along the way. You don't see the prayers of my parents or the supporters of my families and friends. You don't see the sponsors who stood faithfully by my side. You don't see my surgeon, Brian Crispel, who took such great care of me and told me I didn't have to pay him if I wasn't able to return to racing. You don't see my PT, Ryan Bear, who has guided and encouraged me along the way. You don't see the kindness of Yoder Performance as he has checked in on me over the years, always welcomed me to train with his amazing group of athletes. You don't see my awesome teammates who encouraged me, reached out to me, and loaned me a bike and couch in France. You don't see my wonderful friends, Anne and Anthony, who welcomed me into their home in Andorra, fed me and massaged me, and crewed for me during the race. And finally, you don't see the foot that got better and better and better after that night I asked for help. But here I am looking at this picture and I see all of it. And you know what? It feels pretty amazing. Now time for some rest, because thanks to the UTMB World Series, this guy who lost all of his UTMB qualifications during the injury now has a ticket to a little show in late August. Let's see what we can do there. Grateful. Bro, I mean, that's like so goosebumps inducing, and you're a great writer. You're fantastic with words. And I wanted to just read that all aloud. I realized it was quite long, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to talk about this whole journey that you've been on. So maybe first just introduce the injury that you have been dealing with for the last few years. What was it, just for the listening audience?
Yeah. I mean, basically my feet were just a hot mess for the last few years. I actually had I think in 2018, I actually developed a plantar fasciitis in my right foot. And that hindered me for a while, and my left foot was fine. And then somewhere along the lines, my left foot got bad. Kind of with some outside, like lateral foot pain that we thought was maybe peroneal tendons, but also some heel pain, that was probably more like Haglund's, but like would kind of go away once I got warmed up. So we weren't real worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And everything just kind of snowballed. Eventually the right foot got better. The plantar fasciitis went away, and then my left foot was a wreck. And so basically I had super bad mobility, like dorsal flexion in my left side. I could barely push my knee forward. And I just had a lot of pain, and it wasn't just in my heel. It was like that. I think that's why it was also so difficult, because it was hard to figure out what was wrong, because I just had like pain in multiple areas. And so we'd try like one thing and it wouldn't really work. And I basically just banged my head against the wall for a long time, like still doing some running, still doing some racing, seeing different PTs and people, trying different exercises. But like I would make progress, but I would always just kind of hit a wall. Like I could never like continue making progress. So then after I left bar camp, I moved home to Pennsylvania, for a year actually, and bought my bus and built my bus out. And during that time, I finally just went to get like second opinions, basically.
Yeah.
And I saw my PT, Ryan Bear, who was helping me at the time, recommended my now surgeon, Brian Crispell. They're both in the Philly area. I know some people go like to the Stedman Clinic or go overseas to like
the guy in
Sweden or wherever for all this stuff. And I just kind of stayed at home, just in that Philly area, found some guys that, I kind of, liked, and, just trusted them to do the work. So
what was the moment like though, when you decided to stop banging your head against the wall? Because I think this is an interesting thing to hear about, in that you spent a lot of time doing the hard work of rehab, and going back to how we started the conversation, I'm sure you took that rehab very, very seriously. At what point did you sort of like give in to the fact that you needed to undergo the Haglund's operation? And maybe in answering that question, explain what the operation was.
Yeah, well, I think the pandemic helped. We were in the midst of the pandemic and nobody was really racing anyways. And we didn't really know when we'd be racing again. So I think that really helped. It was like, if there's ever a time to be on the sideline, it's now. And the other thing, I think I was just so sick of the pain, and like, we didn't even know for sure if the Haglund's was the issue, because some people have Haglund's and like they're asymptomatic. And like I said, like I did have Haglund's symptoms, but I also had pain elsewhere in my foot that was like not, I would say probably not typical Haglund's pain. So, but with my surgeon, with Dr. Brian, we got all new imaging done, which I also learned that not all imaging is the same. Like you think an MRI is just an MRI, but you can actually get like, there's different like qualities of MRIs. And so like he encouraged me to get like a real good MRI that he was familiar with. So that's what we did, so that we just made sure we got a real good look at it. And it was very evident that there was a significant bone spur growing out the back of my heel, pressing into my Achilles tendon. And that's what a Haglund's deformity is. And so he basically, that was the biggest glaring error he could see in the MRI, I guess, that I also had pain symptoms of. So he just, we just kind of said, well, that's the main thing we can see. So let's just take it out. And if we take it out, maybe everything else will resolve too. Mm-hmm. So then that's what we did. And, it's a little,
but it's sort of a shot in the dark, right?
Yeah,
it's not typical Haglund's symptoms. And so you're like, well, we might as well try this. I mean, there's probably a feeling of just like desperation and hopelessness of like, please work type thing. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, somewhat. I mean, it wasn't complete shot in the dark because I did have pain there. But I had pain elsewhere as well. So it was like, will taking that out solve all the pain or just some of the pain?
Right.
You know? So yeah, but I was just kind of at the end of my rope. So I just, nothing else was really working. So I just did that. I think
exhausted all options. It was really one of the only things left on the table, probably. I'm just remembering this now, but both Rob Krar and Stephanie Howe have had this same operation. It's not uncommon. Did you reach out to them for advice, or did they offer any perspective?
I know that Steph has had it, and we've talked since, because we've kind of the recovery process is long. Like I would say I'm in some ways still going through it, even though like I'm back to racing and training and like doing way better than I was ever before. But it's still like if someone listening has had it and is like, well, my pain's not gone. It's like, well, my pain's not 100% gone either. Like I still have some irritation. If I do a big day, I can still feel something. The day after the race, it was definitely cranky, but then the next day it was pretty much normal. So yeah, it's not like a magic light switch, but yeah, I talked to Rob, not so much Steph, mostly since I've had it, just kind of like sharing our experiences. And, that's nice to hear someone else's like, oh, you still have pain too. Like you have pain when you wake up in the morning, all the steps are bad. It's like, oh, okay. So I'm not the only one. And that's really helpful. But Rob did talk to me, before we did, I forget if we talked on the phone or exchanged texts, but we had communicated beforehand, and he had it done on both of his heels at once.
I think so did Stephanie, or maybe not at one time, but I think she's had it on both feet too.
Yeah, I think she did have both feet, and I can't remember. She might have had one and then the other. Either way, it's brutal because either way it's brutal because one way you have like twice the recovery, the other way you like have two bum feet at the same time. It's like it's brutal either way. But yeah, it was great to have those guys to talk to about it.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and I recall like Galen Rupp just had this recently, and I was just watching the track and field world championships, and Donovan Brazier said that he's about to go get the surgery like next week. I think he was in the 100-meter last night. So something that a lot of runners have had to confront, but yeah, complicated surgery, a hard recovery. And I want to talk a little bit more about what that recovery and rehab has looked like. But I'd also love to hear you talk about like the emotional side of this whole journey, because like this Instagram caption, it's a beautiful articulation of just like what has been going on internally for you. And I can't remember another time where you've truly like acknowledged that, like the pain that comes from it, on a personal, emotional level from injury. And I remember, over the last couple of years, just thinking how well it seemed that you were dealing with this, just like admirably at peace with this injury cycle. Because like when I was hurt in 2019, I was a total mess. I was posting sob stories on Instagram and like totally depressed and in therapy and stuff. And I wondered if you'd talk about the emotional roller coaster that you've been on with this injury cycle.
Yeah, I don't think, I wouldn't say I was at peace really at all during the process. But I think I'm just not really like, I'm not really the type of person to like talk about it all the time. I mean, after a while, I really just kind of get sick of talking about it. Like after a while, it seems like it's all anyone asks you about, because it's like running is what people know you to do and know you for. And so then the main thing they ask you about in life is like running. And so then when you're injured, they either ask you about running and then that leads to talking about being injured, or they ask you about being injured because they know you're injured. And that relates to the running. And so you just end up talking about the injury all the time. And after a while, it's like, you're just sick of talking about the injury, which is like, and also because it's frustrating because you don't really have any hard set answers for people. Like,
right.
They want to know like how long you'll be out or what you're racing next, or, what the problem is. And sometimes you don't have any of those answers. And so it's just kind of a hard place to be. Like, I know with my family in particular, like my mom will always ask me, but like after a while, I'm just like, hey, I probably don't do a very good job of answering her, because it's just like, I don't like want to talk about this anymore. Like, it's just like, I'm like, every morning I wake up, I'm reminded as soon as I get out of bed, as soon as my foot hits the floor, that I'm hurt. And that's pretty crummy, so I don't really need any additional reminders, and then you can also feel guilty that, well, maybe I'm not doing all I should be doing to get better, so you can be really hard on yourself.
But like an athlete like you though, Zach, I mean, like you're one of the best in the world, and like people love watching you race, and you've done so many amazing things, and you've had so many of these just sort of like historic victories that people like look back on with just deep inspiration. And then to like come crashing down to not be able to race for a couple of years, it's got to be really tough for you, right? Like, did you feel like a loss of identity and stuff during this period?
I mean, I think like so one thing that I picked up that I learned in college from my college coach was he would always say like, never too high, never too low. Mm-hmm. So, like, don't let your highs get too high. Don't let your lows get too low. You just kind of stay somewhere in the middle, which is in a sense, maybe sort of sounds kind of like a crummy life philosophy. Cause you're like, man, I want to live on the high. Right. But like, that has really stuck with me, especially through my ultra running career, is just because it's like a roller coaster, man, like even just like wins and losses. But like, especially with injury. So like, I feel like I kind of tried to adopt that during the process of just like never too high, never too low, just kind of somewhere in the middle and keep my head down. Mm-hmm. But still, like, there was definitely a low side, and probably not too many high sides, maybe the occasional day where it's like, oh, wow, I felt like really good today. Yeah. But that was pretty like few and far between. So I think maybe in some way that helped me. I think in terms of identity, I mean, I was still always me. But
like people are asking you what's next, right? And when you are answering that question,
it's rough when people start saying they think you've retired, or they start suggesting maybe you should pursue something else in life. That's kind of rough. Gosh. I think that mostly happened back home. Like in Lancaster, it's very like, it's a very like blue collar area, I think kind of like I feel like it's kind of the area you grew up in where most parents would be like, oh, let's be sensible and like, let's get a good job and not chase these crazy dreams, Sure, yeah. So like, and I think most people, they didn't mean poorly, but it's just like, I think kind of like when I moved back home, when I was back in PA for a year and I was hurt, I think maybe some people could just kind of thought I was sort of out of the sport. Mm-hmm. I don't know that a ton did, but you kind of got that vibe. Or I remember there was a guy over at my parents' house one day, and he was like, oh, like maybe like he might have been asking me if I had like a plan B, or he's like, oh, your brother-in-law could like use some help with his HVAC business, like, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, like I'm still kind of planning to keep doing my job here, but
wow,
it's so that, but you just kind of like, you can't let those people live in your head too much. You just kind of gotta like, be like, hold on to what you want, and like, go, I don't know, like if that's what you want and that's what you're committed to doing, you just kind of gotta hold on, which is, I guess, what I did. I think one of the hardest things though, I think was feeling like I couldn't really do my job, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Brutal
so
feeling when you're collecting a paycheck and being injured.
That's the worst thing. Like that was where I was like, I would almost rather not be sponsored. I was like, 100%. Because I was like, when I'm not sponsored, it's like nobody cares. Like if I'm injured or if I'm racing next month, like you just like when you're injured, you can take care of the injury, take your time getting back in shape and then race again. But when you're sponsored, even if you have a supportive sponsor who's like, hey, we get it. We don't want you to feel pressure to race or to rush through injury. Even if they say that, it's still, you still feel like you need to deliver. Because it's like everybody else has like, you know, when you're any other job, it's like you're expected to show up from like 9 to 5 and do your job and perform well. Right. But like with the way like we perform well, at least in my mind, primarily is by performing well in races. Yeah. And, you know, I know there's social media and there's like your past results and the following you've built and all that. But to me, that's all kind of like, that's all kind of like extra. It's like, that's great, but I don't want to be the athlete who's just like riding my prior accomplishments.
Secondary to the task at hand, which is continuing to perform. Yeah.
If a company is paying me, then I feel like I should be performing. And so like, I was just like, and I think I might've said it to people during the process, it's just like really stinks to feel like you're bad at your job. Cause it's just like, I couldn't really do my job. So that's pretty much the definition of being bad at my job, is being unable to do my job. And that was really crummy. I did not enjoy that. Like, and then there's the side of me that's like, well, if I ever get to the point where I feel like I don't deserve this support anymore, you know, I would like to think that I could graciously step aside and let some other upcoming athlete have that support and be like, hey, look, don't pay me this anymore because I can't do it. Like, I can't do it anymore. If you want to send me free gear, that's fine. But like, give this to somebody else. But there's that side of me, you know, that's like, but I don't feel like I'm done yet. Like, I feel like I can still earn this paycheck. I just can't do it right now. But that's an awkward place to be, where it's like, I don't want to give this up yet because I don't feel like I'm done.
Did you ever lose that?
But at the moment, I don't feel like I deserve it.
Did you ever lose that glimmer in the back of your head? Like after being injured for like a few years on end, was there ever a moment where you contemplated maybe I should just get a job as an HVAC serviceman and put this part of my life in the rear view? Because I'm sure there was some temptation or some moments of just like, God, is this ever going to end?
Not really. I think it was just always still there. Like, I was just like, I think I can still do this. Like, I think, you know, but then once I did get surgery and I did start to come back, there were some doubts like there, because there was a lot of fitness to be like relearned and regained, especially in the running format. Like, I spent a lot of time on the bike and actually got like quite fit on the bike. I think before I launched the bus, I went on a 100-mile gravel ride with my surgeon. Actually, he invited me to do this ride, and we rode, and there were like a lot of climbs and stuff. It was in PA, and I remember he was like, "Zach, you're strong. Like, you're pretty fit." It's like, "Oh, well, thanks. I've been working my butt off. Like, I can't run as much, but like I've been working my butt off riding and stuff." But like, then you start to get back to running, and like running just feels so hard. And like, I would be in races and it'd just be like shorter races too, because my bread and butter is the ultra, but I wasn't even doing ultra. I started out with shorter stuff. So, you know, I feel like there were some days where it's like, do I still have this? Like, am I still good at this? So there was like this question mark, but I did have a few I had one really sort of important performance. Like, there's a race in my hometown, the Conestoga Trail Run, that I race pretty much every year, and I've set the course record there like every year I've raced it. And it's like it's a hard race. It's like how I know if I'm fit. And I raced it. Yeah, I raced it, I guess, last year for the first time in several years. And I was like, I did not know if I had it to like get close to my old times. And I didn't break my record, but I was within like 40 seconds of a race that takes like an hour and 22 minutes. So I was within like 40 seconds, and I was just like, and that was a big moment. I was like, okay, I'm like, I haven't lost it. Like I've said, that was my second fastest time ever on that course. And I've run it during some really good years of my career. So that was helpful, but still, like going to Andorra and stuff, the whole ultra thing, it was all like still a bit of a question mark. Cause I just hadn't done it for so long.
Yeah. Incredible, man. Well, it's so good to have you back. We'll get around to talking about Andorra here shortly, but maybe just give us a glimpse into this rehab process so far since your surgery, because it's been since, I think you said in your post, December of 2020. So it's been a year and a half now. And of course, it has not been linear. And there have been a lot of moments where you question whether you can get back to the same Zach Miller type fitness. So maybe just paint the picture of what the last 18 months have looked like and what that whole rehab process has entailed.
Yeah, I mean, like not linear is exactly right. I mean, you come out of surgery and, you hope it'll be like, oh, wake up and the pain will be gone. I mean, I know enough to not expect that entirely, but still it is slow. Like first there's just all the pain from like, just surgery. Like, I mean, I didn't take the painkillers they gave me after surgery. My surgeon gave them to me and he was like, don't be afraid to take them, but I was like, I'm going to see if I can not take them. And I was like, and I hadn't run an ultra in a while, so I was kind of due for a good dose of pain. So I just like didn't take my painkillers. And the first like 20 hours were pretty excruciating. Wow. It's amazing how much trauma, like the surgery sounds simple. Like, oh, we'll slice open your heel. We'll go in there and like saw off this bone and it sounds easy. Yeah. There is so much pain that causes the body when they do that. And so like those first few 24 hours were pretty brutal, but then I got over that. I was like doing stuff, but I mean, for a while, like I couldn't really do anything for a while. So it's kind of easy. Like I think I started doing like like crunches cause I couldn't really work out. So I just started doing like, I don't know, like 30 minutes of core or something each day. Cause I was like, I can't do anything else. And then I think it was like Christmas Day, I got to like pedal the bike. And so I pedaled the bike. But I think before that, actually what I did was before surgery, I wanted to be prepared to train. So I went on Facebook Marketplace and I bought one of those like exercise bikes that has the arm things that also go. When you pedal, the arms also go. So if you don't pedal with your legs, you can just pump it with your arms. And so I bought one of those for, I don't know, like $25 on Facebook Marketplace. Like this lady probably wondered what the heck I wanted it for. Yeah. And I put it in my parents' basement and I would just go down in the basement. And I would just pump my arms.
See, this is the work ethic, man. This is where we started the convo. You just don't stop.
Yeah. I would just sit there and like put on like, I don't know, like I don't watch a lot of TV or movies, but I watched like a lot of stuff during that time. I would just put something on and I would just sit there and do my arms. And like, I think that's when I got turned on to Ted Lasso. I like blew through the whole first season of Ted Lasso. And
I still haven't gotten around to watching it. People tell me it's amazing, but
dude,
I mean, this is interesting, right? Because like this again is so illustrative of the type of person you are, that you just like go and you work. And I wonder if in moments of introspection, if maybe that's one of the things that got you in trouble. Like, have you reflected on that as somebody who's always been a super hard worker, a high volume trainer? Like, is that then something that contributed to the injury? And like, have you learned from that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it contributed in the sense that I probably started having pain and I probably just kept going. I don't know that like, I'm not like necessarily of the opinion that just doing high volume will make you broken or just working hard will make you broken. But I think that type of like that, doing the high volume and doing like all that work can get like addictive, where that's like, that becomes like, I've learned that so over the years, I think I've noticed that I have to watch myself, because as I train, as I get stronger and stronger and fitter, I train more and more. And so I raise the bar of what I deem like successful, like what makes me feel like, you know how like if you run, like say you run like every day, like 2 miles, 3 miles, and that makes you feel like accomplished for the day. You go out and do your 3 miles. Okay, now I feel accomplished. Well, I feel like I got to the point where it was like, it's like if, running like 3 hours made me feel accomplished, but if I ran like an hour or an hour and a half, like unless it was like a scheduled recovery, like recovery day, I might not. It was like I needed my fix. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be 3 hours, but it's like, but I think that was the danger, is that just kind of my level of like what was acceptable to feel accomplished kind of crept up over the years.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then the other danger is when you don't win a race. Because when you win a race, you feel like you're doing enough. You're like, okay, what I'm doing is working.
Yeah.
So then you're more willing to you feel like you're okay. You have your confidence. So after the race, you're more willing to rest. Mm-hmm. And then when you come back in, you're more willing to like maybe follow like a sensible progression back into training. But like when you start losing or missing your goals, then you're always like, well, now I got to catch up. Like I got to catch up to this guy. Harder. I got to work harder. And I think, and sometimes that might be true, but I think but what you have to be careful of is it's not necessarily the case. And you can work yourself into a problem, I think, both like mentally and physically, because you're just kind of like forcing things rather than following the process. And you get too caught up on like metrics and paces and like, I got to do this many miles or this many hours or this, when I run, I just got to be at this pace. And it just gets very dangerous.
It's just one of those things where like your greatest strength is your work ethic probably, but also sometimes our greatest strengths sort of like put us in a corner sometimes or lead to negative consequences, don't they?
Yeah. So for me, like, I think back to the injury, I think, that work ethic probably got me in trouble, largely in that there were warning signs that I just kept pushing past. Mm-hmm. Now, had I been like seen a warning sign and backed off, let things recover for like a couple weeks or a month, and then went back to the working hard, I think I might've been okay. But I think probably like there were things that weren't right. And I just didn't really like, I didn't really know how to fix them, and they didn't necessarily stop me in my tracks. So I just kind of kept going, but then eventually that's just a crummy thing. And eventually you are stopped in your tracks. So,
well, we all learn lessons, man. Well, maybe last question on this period before we transition and talk about this fantastic triumphant victory and coming through this dark period. In the post, it's fairly powerful when you mention that night of prayer. I don't know if this is a weird thing to ask, but I've always known that you've been, a man of faith, and I'm not a religious person myself per se, but definitely appreciate the mystery and serendipity of life and the universe. And I wonder if you could talk about that moment and maybe how just like your spiritual life had maybe evolved through this dark period.
I can talk about it. Definitely faith is a part of my life, and it's something that has been a part of my life pretty much all my life, I guess. It has definitely like sort of, I don't know, maybe you'd say changed, or the way I think about it has maybe changed over the years. Like I look back to my high school or college self and I'm like, whoa, I do not see things the same way. I have I ask a lot more questions. I read books. I like, I'm like, I maybe wrestle with things more, have maybe a lot more like uncertainties now, where it's like in the past it'd be like, well, no, this is what I believe. And now I'm like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. Like, that seems kind of whack, like, or I can't prove that. So like, where am I with that? But I think specifically to this in the injury process, the one big thing for me was like, I was just like hurt for so long, and like growing up, it was been like, that would have always been something you would have prayed about. And like, I think even through the process, my mom and dad were probably praying like the whole time, like, oh, we're praying for you, you know, that your foot gets better. And I think I just got like, I can have actually a pretty cynical side sometimes. And I think I got to this point where I was just kind of like, well, why? I kind of felt funny praying about my injury, because I was like, why? I was like, there are so many problems in the world. I'm like, there's people that are starving, there's wars, there's like pandemics, there's so many big problems. And I'm like, I'm just a runner who can't really run. Like, what's like, I'm not saying that like there's not a God that cares about me, but I'm just saying, like, of all the things in the world to fix, like, that can't be very high on the totem.
It's down the priority,
you know what I mean?
list. Yeah.
Like, I kind of felt selfish, like asking, you know, for help with that.
Yeah.
And so that was one part of it. And then, but at the same time, I just like, I don't know. I still like, I never like walked, like, I may have like questioned things, but the faith was still always part of things. And, you know, I didn't necessarily feel fully, you know, I had those doubts about like, is this something I should be praying for, you know? But like, I don't know. I think I still
I don't know, but
pray about it at times.
Of like, sometimes you just have to sort of like surrender like the control, you know, and just like ask for help from the universe. Like, I think every person who listens to this, whether they're religious or not, can identify with that feeling, you know?
Yeah. I think to that moment in Andorra, it was just like, I was very stressed, because I had like, I mean, I was trying to get into UTMB this year because I had ran out of all qualifications. And I was just like, you know, and I was like, look, like, I just want, like, I've been emailing with the organization, and I was just like, look, like, what do I need to do to get in? Like, I just need a way. Like, I don't need a way. It's just like, I'm hope there's a way. And I don't need like a free pass. I just like, tell me what I need to do and I'll try and do that. And so, you know, they were like, okay, well, there's these races on the circuit, and if you place, you know, top 3 at this one or top 10 at that one, or whatever, you can get in. And I was like, okay. I was like, good. That's all I need. Like, I need a shot. And so my shot was going to be Canyons 100K. And then I messed up my hip. And so that didn't happen. So then I was like, okay, plan B, and went to Andorra and picked Andorra instead. And yeah, so there was kind of a lot riding on it. It was pretty much my only shot, because everything else after that is kind of getting too close to UTMB, or it's too long or whatever. And I had flew to France to do stuff with the North Face for like a week. And when I went over, my foot was like really cranky, and I ran on it for like a few days. Like, I could run well, but I just like, it was painful. And I was just like, my plan was to go there and then go to Andorra, train, and then race. And then my foot I'm basically injured now, and I'm in Europe. And like, what am I going to do? I thought about just getting on a plane and going home. But yeah,
instead you surrendered to the universe and you asked for some help.
I got to Andorra and I was alone. I went from being with my teammates to being all alone in a Jeep Renegade with a rooftop tent, just like driving around the country of Andorra, like camping up high at altitude. And I got super stressed. And like, one night I was like, because I had actually started trying to run again. I had taken days off, started trying to run again. I did 1 or 2 runs, and the pain was like, still, like, I still had pain, and I was like, what the heck? Like, I was just so stressed. And I finally was just like, I was just praying one night, and I was just like, help, basically, like, help. Like, I didn't even say, like, I wasn't even like, you know, I was just basically just help. It was a pretty low moment, but also a very like real moment, and a very, like, I'll maybe, like, I might remember that for the rest of my life.
I mean, you can feel it in this Instagram post. So you can totally just feel just the I don't know, authenticity of that desperation, right? Of just like, I just need some help here. Like I'm at the doorstep of having my opportunity to come back. I've put in years of rehab and work. I've got the surgery. Like this is who I am, what I want to be doing, and I just need some help. So let's talk about the race now, because help arrived in some form, whether it was, the cosmos or, some spiritual being, but you won the damn race and it was so awesome. When I saw the update, of course, this is Western States weekend too. So I was sort of occupied with other things, not really.
Yeah, there was a lot going on that
Yeah, there was. But I guess, you mentioned how the race ended up on your radar, and you went with the express purpose of punching that ticket to UTMB, but maybe just set the context of what the race is, just maybe provide some stats or description of the character of the event for the audience.
Yeah, the race is fantastic. I mean, Andorra, for American listeners, like probably most of us don't even know that it's a country. But Andorra is a tiny little country wedged between France and Spain. I think it's about 26 miles across. And it's nothing but mountains. It's the Pyrenees. And so in Andorra, there's basically two directions. There's up and there's down, and that's about it. The 65-mile race had my watch said 22,000 feet of climbing. So if you do the math, it's more per mile than UTMB. I don't know, it's a ton more, but it is more. And yeah, it's the course is magnificent. Like I spent time there when my foot did, start to come around and stuff. I reconned the whole course. I saw the whole course. And by the time race day came, I was like, I just want to go run this course, like all in one go. Like, I mean, usually it's like, you're competitive and all that, but it's like, part of it was just like, I want to get out there and run through all of this beautiful terrain in one shot. And yeah, it was fantastic course. It's technical. There's some cruiser sections. But yeah, there's definitely some technical stuff. And yeah, really, really great. And they don't waste time. Like first you start in Ordino at 4,000 feet, and the first climb takes you to the highest point in Andorra at over 9,000 feet.
I'm looking at your Strava right now.
Like 5,000 feet out the gate. And then you drop to 3,000. So you basically drop 6,000 feet. Although they do make you do a climb in the midst of that somewhere. You like go down, come back up. And then after that, that's like mile 20-ish, 21-ish, I think.
It's like 23.
And then you do a 6,000 foot climb out of there.
Silly.
And then that's about halfway when you get the top of that 6,000 foot climb.
Yeah. So I'm looking at your Strava now, and I'll post this in the show notes. I'll provide a link to our listening audience, but about 66 miles, about 22,000 feet of climbing. And just like thinking off the top of my head here. So it's about 15K shorter than the Lavaredo course, but I think takes about 2.5 hours longer for the winner.
Yeah.
So it's shorter, but much, much slower than Lavaredo. So it definitely looks like it's a brutal but spectacular race.
Yeah, it's an awesome, definitely awesome race. I'd highly recommend it. Like I put it up there similar to like Madeira Island Ultra Trail. I think it's a similar style to that, minus the stairs. It's not really stairs. This is all basically like like rocks and stuff, like boulders and stuff like that. So
we have to know though, man. So like you're on the start line, your foot feels well enough, you've got at least some confidence, but I'm sure there was still some doubts in the back of your head. The last time you'd stood at the start line of an ultramarathon was 2019 UTMB. Or did you have a balance of feelings of excitement and insecurity? Because we all know that you race with like such a courageous style typically. And I wondered if like maybe some of that courage or confidence was tempered by a feeling of insecurity or, maybe lack of confidence based on everything you'd been through.
Yeah, I think there was a mix of excitement and like nervousness. again, there were question marks. I didn't know, I hadn't pushed my foot, for that long yet. So I didn't know if the foot would hold up. I actually had a little hamstring tweak too, very minor, but it's like on race day you want everything perfect. And I injured my hamstring back in JFK one year, and ever since it kind of tweaks easier than the right side. And so like that was actually on my mind. I was like, because I was like, man, if that thing goes, it's gonna be like, it's not gonna be ideal for like climbing and descending. And then I was like, and if it goes and I continue running on it, I know it's going to potentially be really bad for it by the end. So I was just like wanting it to hold up, but it did. So, I was okay.
So did you race in typical Zach Miller fashion where you put pressure on the field early, pre-Fontaine of ultra running?
I would say not strictly so. Sebastian Krogvig was on the line next to me. And he had won TDS.
Great Norwegian athlete.
And Christopher Clemente was in there, and he's really good at coming from behind. So I was scared of him because I was like, oh, he has just like sit back there and reel you in after you've like foolishly gone out too fast, because he's done that to me before. And no, Sebastian was next to me on the start line, and he's like usual plan, like I'm gonna like sprint from the gun or whatever. And I was like, or like hard right away or whatever. I was like eventually. I was like, I thought that I didn't plan to go super hard right away, because I did kind of I wanted that UTMB spot, and I think my approach was a little different. I had seen all the course, I knew what was coming, and I didn't really. I kind of sat back in the first stretch. I kind of just sat behind the first three guys. I mean, we're talking like the first mile, and just kind of like watched them. And then when we got to the climb, we got the poles came out, and like I also knew that though maybe I would just climb faster, and I don't necessarily want to climb slow just to climb slow.
Yep.
So Sebastian and I just kind of naturally pulled away on the climb, but I wasn't trying to. I think I pretty much hiked that whole climb. Like I basically just tried to stay behind Sebastian and go like as easy as I could without like losing him.
Yeah.
So like he would sometimes run and I would just keep hiking, because I was like, well, I can cover this same pace at a hike. So it seems like my legs.
It seems like you guys spent much of the race together. Where did you ultimately establish the separation and the gap that you held in the time?
So my friend who was crewing me, we had talked some strategy before the race. And he definitely wanted me to be controlled like to Andorra La Vella, which was like around mile 20 or so, right before that 6,000 foot climb. And then we were like, maybe you can push some on that 6,000 foot climb. Cause if you can pull away there, that's a good chance to get some breathing room. So Sebastian and I ran together to Andorra La Vella, and then at Andorra La Vella, I decided I'd push the gas pedal a little and see what happened. And I did get like an initial gap, but not much. And then he was like right behind, he came up right behind me. And I was like, okay, he hasn't shaken off. So then we just climbed together basically all the way up. He got me a little on the technical descent, to, Gros Rouge. But then I'm trying to think, but then I reeled him back in on the way, basically kind of up the next climb. And then we ran together again until about mile 40. And then that was where the natural break happened. I like that in a race. So I often probably try to force it, but I do like when the separation just comes naturally.
Yeah.
As if like you didn't really change much and the break there just became separation.
Yeah.
So around mile 40, I sensed that he was struggling a bit and I was feeling like I could go a bit. and there was a steep climb, and I went and I got, I didn't go like crazy hard.
Yeah,
I just kind of went steady, and I
did a little bit of a move, and he's slowing down.
Yeah, and then I pulled away, and I kind of got that natural separation, and then he basically reeled me in at the last aid station. I didn't know he was so close.
No way.
Yeah, so like there's a really big climb at the end of the race that takes you back up to like 8,000 feet. You know, one last dagger in your heart, and when going up, you can see way back behind you. So I was looking back and I couldn't see anybody behind me. So I was like, okay, I think I have a big lead. But when I got up to the top, it was like a ghost town. There's nobody up there basically, except maybe a couple hikers.
Yeah.
And my legs were just like trash. They did not want to run downhill. And I had to run down
4,500 foot descent.
I had to run downhill, and I was like, and I was just running, and I was looking back. I was like, I still couldn't see anybody. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and like keep moving as well as I can. And I got the aid station, and like my legs were just like, they were really struggling to run downhill. And I got the aid station. I was standing there. I was like, sort of taking my time. Like I wasn't really being like foolishly inefficient, but I was just like, I was not like racing through the aid. And I started chatting with the people there. I was like, how am I doing? And the girl was like, oh, you're doing wonderful. And then the other guy goes, he's like, yeah, and second is right there. And he points across the way, you know, and I'm thinking I have maybe like a 20, I don't know what I thought, but maybe like a 20-minute gap or so. Yeah. And he points across the way, and Sebastian's like coming down through the grass, like across the river into the aid station. And I was like, I thought maybe they were joking. I was like, no. I was like, you're serious? And they're like, yeah, we're serious. I was like, no. I was like, are you joking? And they're like, no. And I was like, you're serious? And they're like, you're serious. And then like right before I left, I was like, shoot, I gotta go. And right before I left, I like looked at the guy one more time. I was like, you're not joking. And he's like, no. And I just took off, and I couldn't believe it. It was like night and day. I think it was it was just like a mental thing. And I just took off, and all of a sudden I was running. Like I remember looking down at my watch, and I think I was running like 6:30 pace or something. And I was like,
Zach Miller is back, dude. The switch was flipped. The competitive instinct, the juices are flowing again.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not just running well. I was like, my legs actually feel good. Like I'm running downhill and they feel good. And we went into a technical downhill, and I was like, well, because we were on like gravel road. And I was like, well, I don't know how they'll feel in the technical though. So we went in there, and I felt like I ran through the whole technical section faster than I did in training. Yeah, and then I was back to like the bike path, and then it just kind of cruised home. But like, it was amazing.
It was like 16 minutes at the end or something like that.
Yeah, but it was like 3 minutes at that aid station. Yeah. And that was like 10 or 11K out.
I mean, it's just like a perfect illustration of just like classic Zach Miller, man. Just like never give up. So what does it feel like then, Zach, after this 3 years of just like absolute uncertainty, misery, sadness, hard rehab, surgery, etc., to then close this massive loop, sprint down the finish line in classic Zach Miller fashion, securing a victory again on an international stage? Like when you reflect on the journey in these last few weeks, like what does it feel like to be back competing at the highest level again?
Yeah, it feels good. You know, again, it was one race, so I think I'm maybe always a little prone to be like, okay, can I repeat it? You know, because to me, that's kind of like that's when I entered the sport winning JFK. It was like, okay, I won one race, but like, can I do it again? And then once I did again, it was like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm good at this or whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, but no, it feels good. Like it's a big relief. It helps my confidence. It helps, I think, in the training of not feeling quite so much pressure of like, oh, I gotta like work harder and work harder and work hard. I mean, I'm still working hard. Like that's what I like to do. But I think there's a little more like, you know, like I can be a little more, I don't know, maybe
confident.
do things a little smarter, a little more confidently, so that feels really good. But, honestly, the thing that feels really, really good is to basically just be able to go out and run and train and not be in so much pain anymore. Now, I mean, granted, I do still have like, it's a process, and I do still have some pain. And I do still like, it's not like it's just like over, but like but it's like I'm moving forward and like finding my way through it. And that feels real. Like it used to just be like kind of dreaded. I wanted to run, but I kind of dreaded running because the first step always hurt so much. And now it's like, or even just like getting up out of a chair and walking across the room. Like I didn't want to do that, like, because it just hurt and I knew it was going to hurt. So, like, and just to not have as much of that, or to have that to a much lesser degree, is great. Like last night, yesterday was kind of busy, and I was like, just kind of like jumping into my runs without like, doing all my usual warm up stuff. But it was like, wow, I actually did that and actually went well. Like I didn't have to spend like 30 minutes getting things warmed up, and then like I did a morning, actually it was like I slept in. So I did like an afternoon run, like a shorter afternoon run. And then I did an evening run, and it was like, oh, they were both good. Like I wasn't like my foot wasn't all cranky from the afternoon run, when it got to the evening. It was like, no, it actually felt good on both of them. So that's just really nice to just be able to go out and enjoy a run. I talked to John Albin. I hung out with him.
I just had him on the show. We talked about you on the episode.
We talked a lot when we were in Annecy together. Just like, I don't know, maybe our teammates were sick of us. Like we talked so much training and stuff. Like Mike Foote found us like at, I don't know, 9:00 at night in the kitchen or something there, Airbnb, just talking about training. Anyways, though, he's a great guy, and I really like listening to like his brain, and he seems very intelligent and very thoughtful about how he trains. And he told me about his foot injury that he had with the bones in his foot. And one thing he mentioned was that just like running is fun again, because like I think before his surgery, it was just like running was just painful.
Yeah.
And he was just like training. So like everything was just like training, but it wasn't necessarily fun. It was like workouts on the bike, or some other cross training activity.
Yeah. Now that you say this too, he said that he got his operation during COVID also. So
he did
took advantage of that lull in the competitive season to get the work done. And now you're both sort of at the top of your game, it seems like. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's good. It was just like, it sounded like he had a similar experience. Basically just that like running wasn't fun anymore because it was so painful. Like, if he was running, it was like just to get a workout in, and it was just like pushed through the pain.
Yeah. He said that basically he just like spent all winter on skis because of the fact that his foot was at a point where he could basically not run anymore after the summer running season. So he finally got that operation, and now he's able to enjoy running a little bit more. And also and now he's like coming back around to like trusting your body again after these injuries, and having confidence in your feet especially has got to be just such a big feeling of relief. So looking ahead towards UTMB now, you did successfully capture that ticket into the race. What are your goals, and what does training look like, and where's your head at as you look ahead towards the most important race of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I want to finish as high as I can there. I mean, I'm a competitive person, so when you watch a race, you want there to be a group of guys all up there, trying to beat each other, trying to go for the win. So like, and that's what I like to do. And, that's like, I guess ultimately that's what I want to try and do is, be in that fight for, just to be in that battle for the win. It's anybody's day out there. so yeah, you don't know what's going to happen, but I want to prep myself to like be in that battle. And yeah, and I think I'd like to like hopefully really enjoy the race. Although at some point it's probably not going to be very enjoyable after a while. I mean, like even Andorra, which went really well, after a while was just not really enjoyable. Yep. Like that was one of my primary thoughts during that race is I just kept thinking like, why is the thing I'm so good at have to hurt so bad? Like,
or like, so, why did I want to get through injury just to do this to myself again? Like,
yeah. It's like, it's really kind of wild. So
what does prep look like then for you? Like if you're thinking about, putting yourself in that mix to beat the fight and now coming off this big 14-hour effort, I'm sure you had a little bit of recovery and you're now based in Colorado again for at least the next few weeks or whatever. What does prep look like with as much detail as you can provide?
Yeah. I mean, it's different for me because usually I would have raced much earlier in the year. I usually like to race around the time of like Madeira, that like April, May time period, and then have a nice build up to UTMB. But this is a little tight. This is tight it is tight. This is tight for me. I mean, big effort at the end of June, same weekend with Western States. And then you try and turn it around for UTMB. So yeah, it's different. It's a bit nerve wracking. I like a long build up, and this is kind of like a recover and then like sort of a speed build and then punch it. So we'll see how it works. I mean, I've really haven't gotten UTMB right any other year anyways. So like maybe
speed build,
like, just kind of like, well, just kind of like you're going to have like 4-ish quality weeks to like work with. Okay. And like what you want to get done, you just get done in that chunk. And yeah, I mean,
it's like a 12-week block. You've got an abbreviated block as well.
Yeah. Like,
I thought you meant like you're working on your speed or something like that.
Oh, no. I just mean this, like, it's kind of like you want to get this good, solid UTMB training in, but you got to do it in like 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I don't have all the training answers. It's like, okay, do you start slow and just gradually build it and get like one big week at the end and hope that's enough? Or do you try and put in like 4 big weeks? Because you kind of already have your fitness. Like I skied all winter. I built a big engine. I went in, I did Andorra. So like, that's the thing. Like once you do your first race, then you're kind of like hopping from one to the next. You already have this big base of fitness. So you recover. And then it's almost like, you can jump. I don't know if it's trial and error. Like, testing things with training, but it's like the temptation is like, okay, can I jump in at a bit higher volume because I already kind of have all this strength and fitness, and then just kind of go rather than starting down at like a really low volume and building back up again. Like sometimes, maybe you can kind of just like, kind of like ramp it a little quicker, which is like, it's nerve wracking because you're like, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to break the training rules.
Yeah.
But again, like you just kind of like try stuff and, see what works and what doesn't. And like, I know that like, I think I don't really study other people's training really, or not too much, but I have gotten the impression that like, from my Francois will have these like big swings. Like if you look at his training, he'll have these moments where it's like,
I'm so fascinated by his training.
You're barely doing anything, and you're supposed to race 100 miles in like 6 weeks, and then boom, like he just starts doing stuff, and then he does a big race, or he does a big FKT,
like 3 7-hour runs in a week.
Yeah, and it's
4
like
weeks in a row, and then he's just like, ready.
Yeah, and it's like, whoa, it's like, how do you do that? Because that breaks like all the rules of what I was
fascinated.
taught
I'm
coming
fascinated
up as an
by
endurance athlete.
I totally resonate with his approach too, but this is interesting, Zach. And yeah, you're right. Like, especially in ultra running, there isn't a rubric or a template that you can just copy paste, because then I listened to Iron Far's interview with Killian Jornet before Hardrock too. And what Killian was saying was that he was doing big volume, but he was doing short and faster intervals so that he had the volume to get through Hardrock, but he still had the speed to then do Sierras and all between Hardrock and UTMB.
Yeah.
So he's like thinking about all three races in context and training almost for all three at the same time, which I thought was just totally fascinating.
Yeah. And our sport is fascinating like that because the races we do are so varied. And it's like, how do you get ready for all of them? You know, and it's just like, it's not like we're just running 10K or we're just running road marathon, you know, and the athletes who do that aren't necessarily just doing that either. But like, I feel like sometimes maybe there's more of maybe a bit more of a focus, lasered focus, where ours is like, it can be quite dynamic.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to figure that out. But it's like, I guess in this little like shorter build, it's like I kind of like maybe cast some hope in that maybe that Francois method, maybe there's something to it. Cause it's and so it's like, maybe you don't need, maybe my problem in the past was a too long of a build and I was just tired by the end, you know, and maybe it's just like, it can get there and just kind of like peak, you know, get to peak quickly, but then like be at peak rather than past peak.
I think what he always does is he leaves his best effort for race day, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we can all learn from that because even at Hardrock, and maybe we can use this as our sort of closing discussion, because I know you were there, but at Hardrock, you know, we were getting reports that Francois' stomach had turned in Uray, which is about halfway in this direction. And so I was thinking like, oh my goodness, like Francois is sick halfway through. Like he's finally going to have 100-mile race where it goes sideways and he's going to have to dig and it's not going to be easy for him. And then fast forward, he still finishes in 21:51, under 22 hours. He battles through 90 miles against Killian and he's still just like, even when it goes wrong halfway, he still is just so good. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he just like his consistency can be attributed to the fact that he always leaves that special effort for when it matters most. And I think a lot of people miss that when they train for a super long period of time and they just like, you know, go full gas all the time in training is like, it's hard to then have that deep energy that you need at the end. So maybe in closing, you can expand on my thought there, but also any highlights from your week at Hardrock. I know that you guys were serving pancakes out of the Zach Shack. We almost got shut down by the police, but criminal pancake distributors in town.
No, we were like we slung. But I wasn't there. In my defense, I wasn't there for the pancakes. I was pacing Maggie for 14 hours. I was like, we slung quesadillas at Uray. The bus was set up like right on the course. We didn't give them the runners, of course, but like the fans and people. And then I went to pace Maggie. I was like, she picked me up at like at like 7:30 a.m. and she's not having a good day. And she's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" She's like, "You don't have to do this. It's going to take all day." Yeah. And I was like, "No." I was like, "I'm going to do it." And then like 14 hours later, we rolled into Silverton and I was about dead. But anyways, then my buddies they had the keys to the bus and they just flung pancakes in Silverton. I guess the cops showed up because they were like, "Oh, we got some complaints about like an unauthorized food truck." And they were like, "Well, do you want a free pancake?" And they were like,
flapjack.
Yeah, they were like, "Well, we're really just making these pancakes and giving them out for free to people." And he was like, "Oh, so you're not selling anything?" And they were like, "No," which we weren't. And they were like, he was like, "Oh, okay, then you're cool." And so they left us alone.
What about on the competitive side, like being there? It was a historic race, obviously. Killian, Francois, Dakota, Courtney. Any inspiration taken from being at Hardrock this year? I was so bummed to miss out.
it was great to see Dakota up there crushing a 100-mile race. Like, I feel like I remember hearing him back in the day being like, maybe 100-milers aren't for me. You know, like he crushed 50-milers and stuff, phenomenal athlete. But he just, you know, like the hundreds, you know, I don't even know if he was really enjoying them, you know, maybe he was. But so to see him up there, just like toe to toe with Francois and Killian, and like, I think he was only like 15 minutes back of Francois, and he was like 15.
I mean, he had a 12-minute lead at one point. I'm talking to him tomorrow, so we're going to do a podcast too. So I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, it was good to see him up there. It was great to see Killian and Francois doing their thing. I think it was fun to see John Kelly rip down Grant Swamp Pass, because he ran down like probably the fastest of anyone that I saw up there. Yeah. And then the ladies race, it was, you know, it was Courtney out front, and it was awesome to see her having to get it done and crush that record. But then behind her, you know, it was a big gap until second, but it was a great race going for second for a while. And yeah, I mean, with Darcy and Stephanie Case, and Maggie was in there for like halfway, and then she had trouble. But Hannah Green, it was really cool to see her work her way up with her.
Apparently she got a police escort. She got a police escort when she came into town in Silverton.
I heard that.
Anyway, super fun, man. So, I mean, I think the sport is better with you in it, and it's fun to just, you know, kind of chop it up about Hardrock a little bit, but it's even more fun to just kind of like see you back, man. And it's like, I think we're all so looking forward to seeing you race at UTMB, and it's always just so entertaining knowing that you always put your full self, your full spirit, your full body on the line. And it's something that we all aspire to. So congratulations on your recent run at Andorra. And thanks for being open about this last, you know, few years of trials and tribulations. And I think, you know, when you look back at the end of your days, you'll be really proud with how you dealt with that tough moment. And even though it doesn't feel like it's totally over yet, hopefully it'll be something that just builds character for you. And that, and over the course of time, you look back on as a massive learning experience and a growth period in your life too. So thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Debo.